Hi everyone, welcome back. In the previous video, I showed you how to install a Windows Server 2016. Now, of course, we need to configure our server to take on a role within the network itself. And one of the first things that we will install on the server is a server role called Active Directory Domain Services, ADDS for short. ADDS is used to manage users, groups, security on directories, shared printers, computers, etc., etc., etc. So it really makes sure that you can manage your network as one big entity instead of a bunch of separate computers. This video will be all about installing the correct server role, running through the first configuration of ADDS, and lastly, I will show you some of the items within the Active Directory structure. Really going into the Active Directory structure and talking about users and groups and NTFS security and shared printers, etc. That is something that we will do in another video because that is a whole new subject in itself. So here we are back in our virtual machine that we've created in the previous two videos. And again, we have Server Manager open. And in order to install a role, we're going to need Server Manager. We will go to Manage, and we will say Add Roles and Features. Active Directory is a role. There are other things that are features, but in this case, we are installing a role. Next, we will be presented with the following screen, which is just an information screen as we often see. If you want, you can tick this box and it will not be shown again. The next step that we will take is basically choose which type of installation that we want to do. Since we are working directly on the server, we choose role-based or feature-based installation. We just click next. Here we see the server. This is the only server that is in this server manager, so we will just select that one and click next. And now we come to the roles that we can choose. In our case, we will choose Active Directory Domain Services. And the moment we click it, we get presented with a pop-up where it suggests a number of features that we should install. We just accept the default for that one. I will deliberately not tick this box, DNS. And the reason that I'll do that is so I can show you that during the initial configuration of Active Directory Domain Services, it will detect that there isn't a DNS server running in the network, but ADDS needs a DNS server. So in that scenario, Windows will automatically install the DNS role for you. If you want, you can tick this box, but it's not necessary. Click next, next again, get a bit of an explanation, and then the final confirmation screen where you can basically see everything you selected. And then if everybody is happy, we just click install. Now Windows will start to do its thing, check everything, make sure it's good to go, and once it's good to go, it will install the role itself. Right. Now we can see that the actual installation of the role is succeeded, but it says additional steps are required to make this machine a domain controller. The domain controller is the server in a network that controls your users, your groups, your shared resources. There's two steps I can now take. I can either click here, promote this server to domain controller, or I click on close. And here in Server Manager, I see this exclamation mark. Click on that. And then again, we have the promote this server to domain controller. So if you've closed the previous window, you can always see it here. Click on that. And now we have to make a number of choices again. There's three options here. Add a domain controller to an existing domain, add a new domain to an existing forest, and add a new forest. Since this is the very first server in our quote-unquote forest, we will choose the third option. Now we need to give it a name. We've called everything with the server demo, so I will call this also demo, and I will use it demo.local. Please be aware that Active Directory services need fully qualified domain names, so you always have root name .something. I will choose demo.local. I could have chosen demo.com. I could have chosen teachmeets.co.nz. It doesn't matter. Of course, if you have a real domain, if you're working for a company with a real domain, you would fill in the domain name here. We choose next. I'm going to go through some standard screen. First of all, we need to make a choice here. This password is not the password that you use to log into. This is a password that you would need if you ever have to restore your Active Directory from a backup. It will ask you for this password. So you would want that to be another password than your administrator password. These settings we will just leave default. Click next. Now, remember that I said I'm not going to install DNS directly as a server role, and it's got to do with this screen. So it says it cannot find a delegation for this DNS server because there is no authoritative parent zone. Click on more, could not be created, authoritative parent zone cannot be found, or it does not run Windows DNS Server. If you are integrating with an existing DNS infrastructure, you should manually create a delegation in this DNS server. Otherwise, no action is required. As I said, we don't have an active DNS in this scenario. So we do not have to do anything. The installation will take care of it for us. We do not need to create a zone here. We can just click next. Windows itself will now determine the so-called NetBIOS name of the domain. You can see the NetBIOS name is demo, which is the part in front of the dot. So our fully qualified domain name was demo.local. That means that the NetBIOS name of the Active Directory is demo. Just click next. Again, we will just accept the defaults. It will do an overview of all the choices that you've made. Keep this in mind, the password of the new domain administrator will be the same as the local administrator. Keep that in mind. We will just click next. And now the installation wizard will basically validate all the choices and make sure that everything is good to go. We will get some warnings here, but we should not get errors. And as I said, some warnings, no errors. This is an old message that has to do with backwards compatibility. Again, it mentions that it cannot find the DNS server, but it says everything is passed successfully. So the warnings are not what they call a showstopper. We can just go ahead with the actual installation. So we just click install. And this is basically an automated process. All we can do is wait. Here you can see the wizard is installing the DNS itself. Once the installation is complete, it will automatically reboot. And there it is. Here you will see the automatic reboot taking place. As you can see, the server is now rebooted. And one thing that is different right away is the fact that we now see here sign into demo. Remember that before the reboot, the NetBIOS name had come up of our new domain, demo.local, and here we see it. So we fill in administrator, which is the default user, and the password that belongs to it, and we click. Now, if we click on local server, where we changed the computer name in the previous video, we see the computer name, and now suddenly under work group, it's no longer called a work group, but it's called domain, and it is the name of the domain that we entered during the configuration, demo.local. If we go to tools, we now see Active Directory users and computers. And here we can manage all the objects within the domain structure. So here we see computers, which we don't see because we haven't got any computers that are into the domain. Here we see the domain controller where we have just the one that we just created. Here we see all the default users that have been created. Normally you would not start to add users to this, but what you would do is that you would create what is called organizational units, which could resemble the structure of your company. For instance, I will create an organizational unit called IT. I will uncheck this box to make my life easy. And now I see a new folder. And in that folder, I now can create a new user or a group, etc. Users, groups, group policy objects, shared printers, etc. That we will tackle in another video. We will leave it at this for now. Thank you for watching. If you have any questions, just let me know. Like, comment, and subscribe. And of course, until next time.